The United States Supreme Court has struck down a ban on conversion therapy. Now, this is seen as a threat to the well-being of the LGBTQ community. It'll mean young people can be subjected to treatment to try to change their preferences. The case has happened in Colorado. David Smith joins us now, Bureau Chief of the Guardian newspaper in Washington, for more analysis of this one. David, tell us first, how did all this come about?
Yeah, well, Colorado is one of more than 20 states that has a ban on conversion therapy, which can aim to change a children's sexual identity or gender identification. And basically, a Christian talk therapist brought this legal challenge to the law in Colorado, arguing that what happens in talk therapy is constitutionally protected free speech. And of course, with America's First Amendment, that's always a very important issue here. And after a debate, the Supreme Court upheld that argument in an 8-1 vote, which you don't see very often. Not only the conservatives on the Supreme Court, but many of the liberal justices, with the exception of Ketanji Brown Jackson, they basically agreed that the Colorado law censors speech based on viewpoint by allowing only one side of the debate regarding sexual orientation and gender identity to be presented in that therapeutic setting. The objection from Jackson argued, yeah, that's all very well, but let's look at the wider context here. This is about providing healthcare for young people. And certainly other critics of this decision say, look at studies that show this kind of conversion therapy has been linked to depression and suicide in children. But today's ruling doesn't instantly affect those other states, but it certainly could be used as a precedent. And there's already Christian conservative groups talking about bringing similar legal challenges that could try and make this have implications way beyond Colorado.
So many questions here, David, so many questions. I'm wondering whether a child of whatever age it is actually forced into this. I take it they have no choice if it is decided they should have this.
Yeah, I think obviously the parents would try to have a say, but there could certainly be situations in more conservative states where there is little choice for the child. The defenders of this argument who brought this case said, look, this is very different from the kind of shock therapy that we saw 10 or 20 years ago. This is purely conversational. And therefore should be protected by free speech. It's not fair just to have what they perceive as one side of this argument. But certainly, I think LGBTQ groups in the US do look at this in the context of their rights being under attack and rolled back in all sorts of ways. And in particular, of course, Donald Trump has really focused a lot of his attacks on the transgender individuals and tried to make it a law that there's only men and women in America. And we've seen a subsequent rise in hostility to those groups.
I suppose where one stands on this depends on what you think. But from our perspective as journalists looking at this in a purely neutral way, thinking, well, surely choice is what matters and the freedom to choose. And it sounds like on the one side, they're arguing that they must have their point of view put forward, but in the same token of that, suppressing the point of view of the others. I'm wondering whether the LGBTQ community have some way of appealing against this or mounting some kind of protest.
Yeah, I think we will certainly see demonstrations about this. We could see it become a political issue in the midterm elections. The Democratic Party will be under pressure to take a stand. And if and when this comes to other states in the US, I suspect we will see legal challenges. But ultimately, it's hard. I mean, it was, as I say, it was notable. This was an 8-1 ruling by the Supreme Court justices. Even liberal justices such as Sotomayor were sympathetic to the arguments that this ban infringes freedom of speech. So I think it's even on the left, it's not an entirely clear-cut case here, and that's going to limit the options of LGBTQ groups at a moment when they're already on a back foot, already under siege. In the 2024 election, we heard a lot about Donald Trump attacking the idea of using pronouns such as they, for example. It does feel like there's a cultural shift in the other direction at the moment in the United States, and today's legal ruling is the latest step in that direction.
David, thank you very much indeed for that analysis of this decision to strike down conversion therapy, or rather make it available to those who want to subject their children to it. It's happening in Colorado and could well go further across the United States. And thanks again to David Smith, Bureau Chief of the Guardian newspaper in Washington, for his insight.